Welcome back to Rodecast, guys. Hope y'all doing well out there. I'm your host, Rod, as always. And in this video, we're going to be looking at how a grocery chain of some significant size has decided to preemptively fire employees that were most likely hired illegally in the first place. But because of the investigation and the pressure that's been put on them by Homeland Security, and because of the fact that they're seeing that employers are actually being held criminally liable for hiring illegals and setting up schemes to basically screw over American workers, after seeing that that's actually happening, they're actually taking steps to basically try to save themselves before they're criminally prosecuted. Okay, so last week or 2 weeks ago, we covered a story where the Colt Grill in Arizona, the owners of the Colt Grill in Arizona were prosecuted, were literally charged with federal crimes for hiring illegals and setting up a scheme where they were literally bringing in illegals from Mexico and firing American workers and replacing them with illegals. Okay, we covered that story. If you missed it, go check it out over here. And those people were under investigation for like 2 years, since 2023, I believe. So even under Biden's administration, they were under investigation, but no charges were ever filed. But now they were filed. Okay. And that has sent a message. And this is just one example. I'm positive that more stores are firing people who are illegals because they are now afraid that they might be criminally prosecuted for hiring illegals. So this first video is from about a week ago when this story came out, a little bit more than a week ago. And then the second video is from this week, where we have more developments regarding what has happened.
All right, now this is separate from Market Basket's bitter family feud. Tonight, news of a rally in support of suspended Market Basket workers in Massachusetts.
Yeah, some say the reason was a lack of documentation papers. NBC 10's Kennedy Buck reports.
They noticed that many of the employees at Market Basket, they don't have documents.
And when they talk about documents, of course, they're talking about illegal aliens who invaded our country, but they're trying to blunt the seriousness of their crimes by saying they're not documented. In other words, they're not supposed to be here and they need to be dragged out of here.
Documents.
A Market Basket store in New Bedford recently suspended 47 employees, not long after they were asked to show the Social Security cards used to get their jobs.
The market
Suspended is another word for you're fired. Okay, they're not coming back because they don't have any social security numbers, and unless they fake it, which is a crime, they're not going to be coming back to work. And that's the bottom line.
basket.
We can try to protect our workers because a Market Basket is violating a act, only to fire employees without telling them, okay, you have 2 months, 3 months, or something. So and that's why they can find any other work in that time, but they don't know what they're doing right now.
Ventura believes
He's whining that Market Basket didn't give the illegals enough warning before they fired them. They should never even hired them in the first place. And the reason they fired them is because they're afraid they're going to be criminally prosecuted by the DOJ. Okay, just like the Colstons were hit with charges about 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and so that. People who are hiring illegals are on notice now. And this is why I always say it's important to go after the employers as well as the illegals themselves, which we've been doing. Every administration's done it, but not too many administrations have gone after the employers, and fairly so, because it's very hard to prove that they knowingly hired them because of the convoluted nature of federal versus state law when it comes to these employers. It's hard to prove that they knowingly hired illegals. Okay, regardless of I-9 problems and checking I-9. So that doesn't prove criminal intent. It's harder to prove it in court when you prosecute these people with a criminal bar. Okay, it's not just a civil penalty. If you want to put them in prison, you have to meet a higher bar. They criminally had the intent to hire these illegals. They knowingly hired them. That's hard to prove in a court of law. Okay, we all can assume that they knew. Okay, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but a lot of the time you can tell who an illegal is because, like I said, they don't speak English, and that's a dead giveaway. In order to pass any kind of citizenship in America, to be an American citizen, you need to be able to write and read in English. Okay, that's a requirement for any valid citizenship test. So when you don't, it's a dead giveaway, and most likely it means you are an illegal and you should not be here. Okay, that's a dead giveaway. But anyways, The point is, it's hard to prove in criminal court that they knowingly hired illegals. That's why it's so hard to go after employers. But when there's clear evidence that there was a scheme to hire illegals and they knowingly hired illegals, they file charges and they put people in prison. People have gone to prison for hiring illegals and being part of some dastardly scheme. Okay, like the Colstons, like Cold Grill. They've been charged criminally because the prosecutors have definite evidence that they can prove in criminal court that these people did something wrong. Okay, so it takes a lot of hard work to actually put these employers in prison, and the message has been sent out. That's why these people have been fired, because these market basket people don't want to end up in the same place as the Colstons. That's why they're doing this.
Believes the suspensions were unfair because the store had hired those same workers with the same paperwork. He calls this action a result of fear spreading throughout the community as a result of increasing arrests by ICE. And he believes other industries will soon be targeted.
That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. If people who are hiring illegals are now afraid because the law is being implemented on them, that's great. That's not a bad thing. I hope they're terrorized more. Okay. Oh my God, criminals are terrified of the police. Good. I want them to be. And if you're hiring illegals, you're a criminal because you're hiring other criminals who broke into our country. No sympathies. Okay. I'm only glad that finally somebody is terrorizing these people who are hiring illegals. Okay. All these corporate CEOs need to go to prison. And it's difficult to do that, but I hope more of them go to prison. When you don't value Americans and our labor, you exploit illegal aliens to screw over Americans, you deserve to go to prison. Okay, no tears shed for these employers.
Número uno.
Yes, we are afraid because New Bedford is the number one in all the Fishers company, and then that's why we are afraid because many of the employees, they don't have documents. So.
By the way, listen to this. This punk over here, this guy, Mr. Labor Advocate, doesn't speak a single word of English. Okay. And the guy they chose to dub him over to pretend like he does speak English, they got a guy who barely can speak English in the first place. Even the translator can't speak English. Okay. How are you a labor organizer in America and you don't speak a word of English? Okay. This is absolute insanity.
And that's why we are afraid because many of the employees, they don't have documents. So.
As incidents begin to increase, fear continues to grow in the community. The concern now is that people will stop showing up to work, and businesses in New Bedford will soon suffer.
That's great. If you're hiring illegals, you deserve to suffer, and the illegals themselves should be afraid and they should run away back to Mexico, wherever they came from. These are all great developments. Okay. Again, local news, completely biased in favor of the illegals and saying that, oh, fear of the police is a bad thing. No, criminals fearing the police is exactly what we do want. And they have fired the illegals. So that's exactly what I want too. I want them all gone. Okay, I want Americans to have their country back, for us to have our country back. Now let's get to the video from this week.
We're now hearing from one of the 47 Market Basket employees suspended this month over immigration paperwork problems.
Turns out this all goes back a couple of years. NBC 10's Gabrielle Caracciolo is here in studio with the new information. What have you learned, Gabrielle?
Patrice, Dan, this all stems from a 2023 audit of the New Bedford Market Basket, but it wasn't until earlier this month that dozens of employees were suspended.
So in 2023, there was an audit, and they must have found irregularities because this company has been hiring illegals for a long time. But it's only now, when Trump actually decides to enforce the immigration laws, that there have actually been firings, because now they're afraid that the enforcement is actually coming for them. And they got rid of as many of their illegals as they can. They're going to get rid of more, and more stores are going to do this. Watch, I'll be making more videos in the next coming month, because there is fear spreading. Criminals who've been hiring other criminals, illegal aliens, are now afraid. These corporate criminals who've been screwing over American workers for decades, they have a reason to be afraid. Okay, because Trump's side, especially Kristi Noem and the DOJ, are looking to put them in prison for hiring illegals. That's why they fired these people.
Me sentí muy triste. No somos desechables. Somos personas que tenemos hijos que dependen de nosotros.
A former market.
Yeah, all of us have children who depend on us, except this is not your country. You don't even speak English, yet you want to live here and work here. Your feet have no right to touch this land. Okay. This woman is pretending like as if she was related to George Washington and she has some right to be here. All these immigrants are the most entitled people I've ever seen. And they're not even immigrants. They're illegal aliens. Okay. And the immigrants, I don't have, I'm not a fan of the illegal immigration either, but nevertheless, we're talking about illegals right now. Okay, no, none of them have any right to be here. Like, this is not your land. Your ancestors didn't build it. You weren't born here, so you have no right to be here. It's like me going to Mexico and claiming that I have a right to be here and the Mexican government must provide me a job. Who am I? I'm not a Mexican. I didn't build Mexico. I'm not an Aztec. What right do I have to come into their land and demand things? I have zero rights to do that because I don't belong there. Okay, and these people don't belong here. She has the temerity to talk about how she has to have children. And American citizens have lost jobs out to scumbags like you who invaded our country. And now you want to cry to us about how you have to feed your children? Go back to Mexico or where you came from and build up your own country. Okay, we owe you nothing. Okay, and it's great that you've been fired. I support that. And no amount of sob stories and crying is going to get me to turn against my own people. This country is for Americans, and companies in America have to be wrangled and forced into hiring American. And if they don't want to, you're going to go to prison or we're going to retract your business license. Get ready. Okay, get ready. And that we have to actually do that. You have to show corporations and capitalism that they're going to have to prioritize national interests if they want to make any money. That's how you get control of the corporate sector. If you don't, they're going to do what they've been doing forever, which is screw over Americans. There's no sense of nationalism or patriotism in these capitalists. And you have to force it into their mouths if you want to save America and to save American workers. Can't let capitalists do whatever they want. These business people will screw you over and screw America over to make a buck. That's a fact. And everybody who has any sense knows it. And if you don't do something to enforce the law on them, they will keep screwing over Americans. And I'm glad that DHS and DOJ is finally doing something against these people.
A former Market Basket cashier speaking out anonymously to Telemundo in Spanish. The mother was one of 47
Of course she has to speak in Spanish. She doesn't speak any English. And she thinks she can live in George Washington's country, in Anglo-Saxon land. She doesn't even speak English, the Anglo-Saxon language.
Suspended employees after a federal documentation audit.
Me dice el jefe, lo siento mucho, me dice, pero usted no puede seguir trabajando. Yo le digo, ¿por qué? Me dice, porque no tienes un número de seguro social.
A Market Basket.
Why was a person with no social security number hired in the first place? That's the question. The answer is because they want to make money off of illegals. That's why they were hired. Okay, and they should still be arrested. Even after firing these 47, I think the employer should still be arrested, okay, and charged with criminal charges. And I know it's difficult, but the government should try to do that.
Me dice, porque no tienes un número de seguro social.
A Market Basket spokesperson says the Department of Homeland Security asked for the I-9s of employees in 2023. They say the investigation found the paperwork had not been properly updated, leading to the workers' suspension.
It's sad because you have this.
They're pretending like they didn't know that the employees were illegals. Please.
It's sad because you have this population that 47 people's lives has been put upside down.
Helena Da Silva Hughes runs the Immigrants Assistance Center in New Bedford.
Sure, of course we have a bleeding heart who's crying for the illegals who lost their jobs. Disgusting. She doesn't give a hoot about Americans. Okay, all they care about is illegals, these progressive open borders types. When did you ever hear them cry for American workers who were turned away because all the spots were taken by illegals? Never. They advocate for the illegals to take our jobs away. That's what the progressive left wants. Third world peasants they care about. Americans, not so much.
If there is an irregularity between the tax filing, the tax withholding, and of course the I-9, they'll all tie together at some point. They have to.
James Mose is a professor of accounting and taxation at the University of New Haven. He says federal matching programs will eventually notice something is off.
So what they do is the IRS will go, okay, Market Basket, you have issued W-2 forms for all these employees. They did not file tax returns. Are they still employed? What's their address? So forth and so on. And they'll trace it out that way because failure to file a tax return is a federal crime.
With all that information now in the hands of DHS, Hughes says there's fears the layoffs are just the start and deportations could be next.
When is it that they're going to stop picking up these individuals, right? Because they have.
Hopefully soon they'll hunt them down and go after them after they get the financial records. And we talked about how DHS got their hands on the IRS records in another video, which I'll link over there. That also gave them more information of where the illegals are. And this is even more information directly from the employer and the I-9s where these illegals are. The people who didn't make sense when they compared the records.
Have this information, so That's a huge concern of ours.
Of course, she's hugely concerned. She's hugely concerned that the illegals will be shipped out of here. I'm not concerned. I think it's awesome.
Basket said in a statement they look forward to welcoming the employees back to work as soon as they update their paperwork.
Sure, they'll be back to work. Yeah, they're never coming back to work unless they're able to get fake social security numbers, which is a crime, by the way. So this would not be happening if it weren't for DHS, Kristi Noem, and Trump's administration led by Stephen Miller, who's the real mastermind behind all of this. And we can thank Stephen Miller for most of the things that are happening. He's the one who was doggedly in Trump's ear, while in the other ear, there are corporations trying to get amnesty for illegals. Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem and all the other good people that care about America and Americans are in the other ear telling him not to do that, because Trump has in the past been okay and floated the idea of giving amnesty to some of these illegals just because we need them.
Is President Trump really saying that he's considering amnesty? What do you think? Here's what he posted today on Truth Social. Our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good long-time workers away from them, with those jobs being almost impossible to replace. Really?
To be clear, we do not need them. That is one of the biggest lies pushed by the amnesty left. Okay, and Trump should not fall for that. Okay, he has flirted with falling for that, but so far he hasn't, because Stephen Miller has won. Okay, but there are corporate CEOs in the other ear, agricultural people, construction people, who are in his other ear trying to get him to give amnesty to these illegals. And if he does it, he becomes Reagan and it's all over for him. Okay, he becomes the next open borders president. Hopefully he doesn't do that. Okay, but Stephen Miller has won so far, and all of this is happening because of that guy. Okay, there's one person that we have to thank for everything that's happening, for leading Trump in the right direction. He's an advisor, Stephen Miller, for the president, and he's the best one. I'm glad that this is happening, and it's because of the Trump administration going after these employers criminally for hiring illegals that this is happening. Otherwise, they would have never fired these people. These 47 would still be employed. And like I said, if they're doing it, then other companies are starting to get the point that they shouldn't be hiring illegals either. And you'll hear more stories of more illegals being fired in the future, because in the end of the day, none of these people want to risk going to prison or losing all of their business, which is what they're risking by hiring illegals. So if you actually enforce the law, people will finally start hiring American and not risking hiring illegals, even if it makes them more profit. And that's the position we want to be in. The law actually being enforced and American workers being emphasized and treated better than illegals are. Because right now, the marketplace is very, very hospitable to illegal aliens because the laws are not being enforced properly. But when you do it, you'll see Americans getting more jobs and illegals leaving America because they can't hold any more jobs, because there are no more employers who are willing to risk going to prison to have illegals as their employees. And that's exactly the position we want to be in. And that's all I got to say for this video. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Stay safe out there.